Hi, I'm Mel Puzon with Occupy Your Voice, coming to you from Access Tucson. Thanks for watching.
Do you know what a GMO is? General Motors workers. What do you know about GMOs?
Which stands for?
Yeah, we don't know.
I know HMOs, but that's
Have you ever heard of GMOs?
GMO? I've heard of it, I don't know what it stands for.
GMOs? I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you know what GMOs are?
No.
Okay.
A genetically modified organism, GMO, is an organism whose genetic material has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. Organisms that have been genetically modified include microorganisms such as bacteria and yeast, insects, plants, fish, and mammals. GMOs are the source of genetically modified foods and are also widely used in scientific research and to produce goods other than food. The term GMO is very close to the technical legal term living modified organism, defined in the Cartagena Protocol of Biosafety, which regulates international trade in living GMOs, specifically any living organism that possesses a novel combination of genetic material obtained through the use of modern biotechnology.
You can't handle the truth.
Your puny little head would explode.
What makes you think you have the right to know?
So are these three little letters, GMO, really dangerous? What we don't always take into account is that a great majority of food now that we eat in this country, the corn, most of it's genetically engineered. The soy is mostly genetically engineered, sugar beets, and canola. So what does this mean when you're eating dinner at night? Well, a lot of the food that you're eating, whether you believe it or not, is genetically engineered. What does this do to your body? What does it do to the cells in your body? What does it do to your DNA? What does it do? You know what? We don't really know.
In Brussels, thousands of protesters have hit the streets calling for an overhaul of European food policy. The rally came as a new French study claimed rats fed GM corn produced by US firm Monsanto had suffered tumours and multiple organ damage.
But not here, baby.
Here in America, you don't get the right to know if you're eating genetically modified organisms.
We should talk about genetically modified foods. And again, this is a conspiracy of both parties. Obama said in 2007, we would label genetically modified foods, which, by the way, Europe has this. China labels, China, which puts
That
lead
bastion of freedom.
and puts lead in baby food, you know, or some shit like that.
At least you know it's there.
We can't have that in America. You know why? Because in America, corporations run the show. Even though 9 out of 10 Americans would like foods to at least be labeled to, at least we know they're frankenfoods.
President Obama this week signed into law a bill that could have huge consequences on the future of food in the country. The Agricultural Appropriations Bill has been dubbed the Monsanto Protection Act by critics of the agricultural giant. That's because a provision in the law protects genetically modified seed patents from litigation over health risks. So if you get sick, too bad. You can't take it to court.
Unless
you demand it. Unless you demand that GMOs get labeled.
Permaculture is a branch of ecological design, ecological engineering, and environmental design which develops sustainable architecture and self-maintained agricultural systems modeled from a natural ecosystem. Provision for all life systems to continue and multiply. This is the first principle, because without a healthy earth, humans cannot flourish. Provision for people to access those resources necessary for their existence. Reinvesting surpluses back into the system to provide for the first two ethics. This includes returning waste back into the system to recycle into usefulness.
It's somehow good for you. Got to get a result or two in the form of something real. Now if you're feeling stressed and not the best and have trouble finding happiness, well, here's one thing I will suggest. Obtain yourself a yield. Obtain yourself a yield. Sustain your energy. Don't drain yourself. Maintain yourself. Obtain yourself a yield. Money is not the only yield. You could be making a bigger deal than what you eat for your next meal. You can't run on an empty tank. Ignore the stash of cash in your pocket. Just make a salad with some homegrown rocket. Just have to go at the back and pluck it. Don't need to go to the bank. You gotta work your days for stuff that pays. Not just money, but in many ways. It's time you clear away the haze and obtain yourself a yield. Obtain yourself a yield of something you can eat. You can produce some things of use with your own two hands and feet. Obtain yourself a yield right in the here and now. Make sure to earn something in return. Here, let me show you. Feeling sleepy, then go and have a sleep. And if you feel like there's not enough air, then breathe in very deep. And if you're thirsty, then you order, get yourself a drink of water. And if it's gonna be cold and you're feeling bold, you can cheer yourself a sheep.
As a matter of fact,
in any given moment, there's everything you need. Just look around, it will be found. And obtain yourself a yield. Obtain yourself a yield. Take only what you need. Life's pretty fun when you're getting some, but there's no need for greed. Obtain yourself a yield, and one for others too. Make sure to seal both ends of the deal. What's good for both of you? Yeah, an easy way to do it is to give one to your friends. Because the good things you do come back to you, and the yield just never ends. That's right, the good things you just never, ever, ever, ever ends.
Vertical farms have become a popular meme since Mike first wrote about them in 2005, and I first showed Gordon Graff's Sky Farm 4 years ago. Since then, I became somewhat dubious about them, agreeing with Adam Stein that they were half-baked. Writing vertical farms aren't going to solve our food problems and fix our horizontal farms before we go vertical. Reviewing vertical farm guru Dixon Desbaumler's book made me even more despondent. Meanwhile, Gordon Graff continued working away at his vertical farm concept at the University of Waterloo School of Architecture. I was invited to be an external examiner at his defense of his master's thesis, Sky Farming. In it, Graff makes a very convincing case that vertical farms not only can work economically, but that they can provide a lot more than just food. Unlike almost every other vertical farm proposal to date, Graff has designed an entire system looking at all of the inputs, outputs, and economics. Graff writes, "A vertical farm must be able to produce enough food to cover the cost of its day-to-day operations and ultimately the capital cost of the building's construction or renovation." While this is clearly dependent on some factors outside the realm of architectronics, such as the market price of food and current state of grow lighting technology, the physical arrangement of the building can have a profound impact. For the purposes of the thesis, Graff concentrates on one form of hydroponic system, a drum system like the Omega Garden seen in Tree Hugger here. In terms of yield per kilowatt hours, it is probably the most efficient system available. He packs it all into a 14,700 square meter building. The drums are then arranged on the production floor. An automated system extracts the drums and moves them to the ground floor via special dumbwaiters for harvesting. On the ground floor, the contents are harvested and shipped, and the drums are then returned to the growing floors. While a drum system is the most efficient available in terms of electrical consumption, it still adds up to a huge number. But the lights aren't the only thing sucking up juice. Plants transpire a huge amount of water, and the Sky Farm has giant dehumidifiers to recapture it. Gordon writes, "Conventional greenhouses and other indoor agricultural facilities currently avoid reclaiming transpired water, electing to simply expel it to the outside world and consume more water to replenish irrigation levels. The incidence of water stress is widely projected to increase throughout much of the world in the coming decades. One study has calculated that if present trends continue, 1.8 billion people will be living in absolute water scarcity by 2025, while full 2/3 of the human population will face water stress. With agriculture currently accounting for some 72% of human water use, it seems likely that such steps to reduce water consumption will become a desirable provision of vertical farming in the future. In California, an acre of lettuce sucks up between 1,800 and 3,500 cubic meters of water. The Sky Farm consumes 14.4 cubic meters, 1/240th as much. That is a very compelling reason to sit up and notice vertical farming. That adds up to a lot of electricity, but fortunately, there is a readily available source being trucked all around Toronto: organic waste from the city's green bin composting program. 97 tons of collected waste would be fed each day into anaerobic digesters that produce methane gas, which then runs General Electric Jenbacher gas-fired generators. On the ground floor, the contents are harvested and shipped, and the drums are then returned to the growing floors. While the drum system is the most efficient available in terms of electrical consumption, it still adds up to a huge number. Nothing is wasted. Even the little bit of nutrition-depleted wastewater is run through living machines, a self-contained biological wastewater treatment system designed to purify water using microorganisms, algae, plants, snails, and fish. Gordon's vision of the role of vertical farms in the city is powerful and persuasive. He describes how wasteful and inefficient our current system is. Urban citizens consume food, water, and other commodities. Their buildings and appliances consume electricity, and their vehicles consume fuel, the latter two also involving the consumption of raw materials in their manufacture. Without the complementary metabolic functions of producers or decomposers, urban agents must obtain these resources from sources found outside the community, while also creating wastes of little use to the community, forming the traditional input and output externalities of urban life. Instead, the vertical farm is part of a closed system. Vertical farming would increase a city's resilience to the more long-term systemic alterations that human society is widely expected to experience in the coming decades. With vertical farming's maximally efficient resource use and functional segregation from the natural world, cities could achieve food security amidst the environmental transformations and resource shortages that would cripple a conventional urban food network. If there is one complaint about the project and the role of vertical farms in cities, it would be that Gordon did not think big enough. The creative leap that Gordon makes is to tie the vertical farm into the city's organic waste system. But there is a really good reason to put this in the middle of a sea of condominiums. It could act as a giant purification system. Imagine if all those buildings had vacuum waste systems delivering organic waste, urine separating toilets to deliver phosphorus, gray water systems to supply the plants, which then return pure water through the dehumidifiers. It feeds the city and processes its waste in a closed loop. Gordon Graff's thesis is not fully resolved. Architecturally, it is not the eye candy that makes so many vertical farm proposals so delicious. But so far, as some can tell, it is the first time that anyone has made a plausible case for why one would want to put a vertical farm in the middle of a city, and shown how it might really work technically and economically. The vertical farm is no longer just pie in the sky.